Hey guys, welcome back to Hot Topics. My name is Katelyn Gonzalez, and today on this 420 occasion we have Andy Callaway from WUTK The Rock and President of UT Republicans, Alex Swisher. So how are you guys doing today?
Very well.
Doing great.
All right, so just to get down into it, what are you guys' stances on marijuana legalization?
Well, quite simply, I think it should be taken off the federal list of prohibited substances, especially Schedule I substances. It's in a category with heroin and LSD, and I think, even if you're not actually in favor of marijuana, even if you don't think it's a good choice for anybody, I think most people can agree it's kind of not in that class of drugs. And I'd like to see the states have the right to legalize, tax, and regulate it. And also I'd like to see medical research be expanded. Right now you have to go through 2 to 3 federal agencies if you even want to study it, and there's only one school in the country, Ole Miss, which you can actually go and study the effects of it there. So yeah, there are a lot of roadblocks, and I think the government needs to get out of the way on this issue.
What about you?
I am against marijuana for recreational use, but I think there are other steps that we can take, such as decriminalization, to kind of help with the jailing process. I don't think that everyone who smokes marijuana should just be jailed for X amount of time. And then for medical use, I definitely am in favor of doing more research and definitely looking at ways that we can use that. I know that it's been effective with seizure patients, patients with depression, and just other things like that.
So on the issue of medicinal marijuana, here's an issue that I thought of. With employers, how do you think, or if at all, do you think that employers should regulate their employees that maybe have marijuana cards? Like, let's say you are having surgery and your surgeon is high. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that there needs to be a lot of research, and I think there needs to be a lot of steps and different things that need to be put in place, definitely in the workforce, and then just definitely within handing out these medical marijuana cards, making sure that people really know the effects, that their employers are aware of it. I definitely think that should be part of it.
Well, certainly I don't think you want an environment where people are being prescribed this and then all of a sudden they're not able to get a job, or they're liable to be fired from their job. Because painkillers, for instance, you don't want someone showing up to work high on painkillers, but it's perfectly reasonable if you've had surgery to be prescribed that. So there needs to be some reasonable, common sense there, I think, at some point.
Yeah. So given the circumstance that marijuana is legalized for recreational purposes, do you think that it would possibly reduce consumption of marijuana?
I think there's some potential there. You've kind of seen that a little bit in Colorado with people under the age of 18 since they've legalized it. Which is actually not what you would really expect from that. It's kind of the opposite, actually. But again, it's so widely available, honestly, legal or not, that most people who are going to make that choice at this point I feel like are just going to make that choice, and the people who are going to abstain from it are going to abstain from it at this point. I don't know how much legality really has to do with that.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of sneaking around with marijuana use now. So I don't know that legalization would necessarily, be like, oh, this is no longer the rebellious thing to do. Because I think that, just in the past few years, it's even become more common, and you're seeing it even more. So people, aren't really seeing it as the rebellious thing to do, which I think a lot of that comes down to that.
So would you say that maybe the stigma around marijuana has kind of lessened in the last few years?
I think without a doubt, it's become pretty widely accepted. I feel like even if you go back a few decades ago, public opinion on whether it should be legal or not, it was well below 50%. Now it's above 50% for the first time. You have the majority of Americans actually want to see it legalized nationwide. And obviously, if you break it down state by state, it might be a little different. And I think personally it should actually be left up to the states. But yeah, the attitude has definitely changed.
Yeah, I would definitely say that just with, I think we have about 38 states now that have legalized marijuana use, just in different capacities, whether that's medicinal or recreational or however they're regulating that. I think that that's definitely taken a lot of the stigma around, your typical pothead, I guess you would say, away.
Yeah.
None of those running around today.
Yeah, so geared more towards college and UT in general, how many people do you think smoke pot regularly or have tried it before? Is it a majority?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much everyone I know.
It has to be, at least as far as tried, certainly a vast majority.
Yeah.
And even people who use it occasionally, at least, it's got to be a good number at this point. And also, it's going to be a little different for us. We're on a college campus, so it's maybe a different sample, but I think that you're going to find that pretty consistently across the country at this point.
So do you think that maybe legalization of marijuana on campus here, do you think that would help or harm students?
I definitely, just in my experience with my friends or people that I know that have used it, I've seen like a downfall in their grades, and some have had to essentially like swear off of it for a semester, or swear to only do it on the weekends or whatever they're trying to do. So I definitely think that could be a negative thing to see that. But I definitely think that on campus, if we're not going to allow alcohol, I don't foresee, even if marijuana was legalized for recreational use in Tennessee, that it would be allowed on campus.
Right, I definitely don't see that happening, especially since it's not even a wet campus at this point. So I definitely don't see marijuana being allowed, whether it's legal in the state of Tennessee or not. But yeah, I think this isn't so much of a campus issue necessarily. I think whether it's people's grades or whatnot, or just overall the image you want to have for your campus, maybe not the best thing.
So there are definitely a lot of college students that do partake in marijuana. So if it was legalized, what do you think the age should be? Do you think it should still be 21?
I mean, I guess the choices are 18 or 21, I suppose. Personally, I think, I don't know. It's really hard to say. 21 seems like the responsible age to say, I guess, because I'm not going to sit here and tell it. I'm advocating for its legalization because I think the cons of that are just far outweighing the pros of locking people up for it. But it's not, by no means is it completely safe, and it can cause issues with cognitive development before you're 25. So yeah, I think 21 is a pretty fair compromise there for sure.
Yeah, I would just say that look at what other states are doing and just look at the research. I would hope that our Tennessee lawmakers, if they did decide to make this for recreational use, are looking at all those facts and statistics before they make that decision, and that they do it responsibly.
And also, perhaps a big issue would be DUIs and driving under the influence. How do you think that should be addressed if it's legalized?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just in my family, it's affected me personally, as far as my mother was hit by a drunk driver in 2015, and she's unable to return to work because of that. So I definitely think that there's so much with marijuana right now that, we don't have breathalyzers for marijuana, so how are we going to judge that? How are people going to know that? I don't know all the terms associated with smoking marijuana, so whatever people do, how much they consume is going to relate. I think there's so much education out there about alcohol that we've been able to, either reduce DUIs, or people are at least aware of what they're doing. So I definitely think that there should be a lot of research if we are going to legalize it for recreational use, so that, people are aware of what they're doing, and that there's ways to test that, if people are driving under the influence of marijuana, so that we know.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there is a sort of like a breathalyzer. I think it's like a saliva test that a police officer can give you on the side of the road. I think it might be more expensive actually than just giving someone a impairment test. But yeah, there should absolutely be no tolerance for it. And I guess in that sense, the law should stay consistent with what it is right now, as far as it is, because yeah. It has no place behind the wheel of a car.
Exactly. So what is your final argument, I guess, for legalization and against?
Well, I think it all comes back to incarceration for me. I think that's the big thing. And people having criminal records and having issues finding jobs, and being away from home, being away from their families because of that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily even a good decision that they made. It's when you think about the fact that alcohol is legal, that tobacco is legal, things that, quite frankly, alcohol it causes more impairment, tobacco causes more health issues. I don't think we should treat it with a double standard. I think we should give people the freedom to make their own choices there, but also responsibly, and just like cigarette packet has a warning on it, I'd have no problem with marijuana being sold the same way.
I definitely think that I'm against legalization, but I'm more for decriminalization, where people are given citations. They're doing that in DC now, because I don't want to see people jailed for these offenses, but it is a drug, and I think that we should treat it as such. And just as far as medical marijuana goes, I think that we need to do a lot more research before we begin to allow that, and just how it would affect our state too, because I think there's a lot of things that go into that people don't realize, that other states are more equipped to go ahead and bring this into their state than I would think a conservative state like Tennessee is probably not. So that's kind of my stance against it.
So do you guys have any final thoughts on the topic? Just general opinions?
Well, it is 420, so if you're going to choose to do it safe.
Yeah, smoke responsibly.
All right, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Topics. Make sure you tune in next season. Bye.